Hello, my name is Susie Clevenger, and my book is titled Insomnia's Ink. Insomnia's Ink is birthed from night hours of little sleep, caffeine, and open-eyed dreaming. Sit with Susie Clevenger beneath a 40-watt moon and explore the shadow and light of emotions that visit her between midnight and the birdsong of morning.
Book Lovers Unite. I'm Demethius Jackson, and you're listening to the Chapter 1 podcast. The greatest stories ever written all begin with Chapter 1. In each episode, our guest authors will share their first chapters with you. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with a wonderful poet by the name of Susie Clevenger. After recovering from a terrible accident, Susie's passion for poetry was reignited as she was literally recovering and rediscovering herself. She has an excellent voice for poetry, and she has a very short and visual style. So today she'll be reading from her book entitled Insomnia's Ink, and it starts right now.
Graveyard shift. A small lamp illuminates the dog-eared journal, where cluttered words spill in bits and phrases from Insomnia's pen. Poetry works the graveyard shift. Currency of dreams. I stow words deep in my pockets, along with seashells, stones, and bits of glass. They are treasures, currency of dreams. When I can't speak, they are my voice. When I can't walk, they are my journey. My voice, fragile as a faded alphabet, separates meaning from silence. Ink weeps discovery across an empty page. 3 days of breath. Star eyes see tomorrow through the thread spun into length of days. A question rocks 3 days of breath before what will be is sealed. Fed from the moon's breast, infant dreams spill from cradle to first dust of dawn. With thread and knife, fate arrives to cut life into hours that can never be changed. An open wound. Poetry is a window into secrets, ink confessions of a strange mind that refuses to sleep on an open wound. Suspended between truth and lie, night and day, beginning and end, I take shallow breaths of incomplete. Watching sunrise melt stars on the horizon, I wonder if noon will find me still sorting through words whispering in my head. Years float from scissors. I no longer carry you in my hair. Years float from scissors to the floor and I am free. The hate you sprinkled in my starlight now mixes with dirt. A broom waits to remove the last tie to your midnight voice. My eyes are brighter, bluer, wider, at peace. I no longer carry you in my hair. Birth on canvas. The canvas, open-thighed with birthing pains, begs my brush to be its midwife. Inadequate, but inspired, I deliver the newborn with strokes of paint across pallor's cheek. Rooted in burnt umber, a trunk sprouts leaves of gold and peach-nippled fruit. When my muse speaks, it is finished. I feel relief, but in this brief respite, I hear the first moans calling from another womb.
You have a very good voice for poetry.
Thank you.
I feel like I could just listen to you speak all day. Very good stuff.
I could talk all day.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Now, we're here to talk about Insomnia's Ink, but your published poetry actually began with Dirt Road Dreams, correct?
Yes.
There's a pretty interesting story behind how you came up with that concept, going back to your childhood, I believe.
Yes, I grew up in farmland where I was surrounded by tobacco fields and corn, and there wasn't a whole lot of advantage or support for poetry. And so I sort of began then writing and kind of hiding it in a notebook and what am I going to do with this? And so I had dreams of someday being a poet. So that's why Dirt Road Dreams came about.
So when you first began, you had no idea that this would actually become published work. This was just something that you were writing just for yourself.
Yes. Well, I started in my freshman year. My English teacher, Mrs. Kilgore, introduced me to Edgar Allan Poe and Poe's poetry. And I had some darkness in me that I needed an outlet for, and his poetry spoke to that. So I started writing, and I just really didn't share it with anyone. I just kept it to myself. And then it's just like, it was for whatever reason in life, I just went silent. I raised kids, was married, and I didn't write, I didn't do anything. And ironically, a car accident reawakened the poet in me. I suffered some brain damage, personality changes, ADD, and I sort of was trying to discover who I was in the middle of this, because I do have some memory lapses. And one day I sat down, it was around 2009, and I said, I'm going to write a poem. I just feel urged to write a poem. And then from there on, I wrote almost every day.
So it was very much a sense of rediscovering yourself after the accident.
Yes, because I was a changed person. My husband, he's had to deal with a lot because of my personality changes and things I was interested in before.
Yeah.
I just looked at it and go like, who does that? Because the accident, she hit me on the driver's side. Had a green light that was unprotected, so I had to wait. And she didn't see me. She hit me going excess of 50 miles an hour on the driver's side. My airbag did its job. Then the car started to spin, and I broke out the driver's side window with the back of my head.
Oh, no.
And so the back of my head was stapled together. It caused the brain to slam against the front part of my skull, which is really rough. That's who you are. Mm-hmm. Everything you are, your personality is in that frontal. And so it caused microscopic tears and altered me. Mm-hmm. And so, there's good and bad. My husband, poor thing, has to live with it. but he's lived with me for 46 years, so.
Yeah. In a sense, you were given a second chance. It's kind of like a rebirth.
Yes. Yeah, it was. It literally was, because there's so much of me that changed. Like, I never drank coffee in my life, and I went in one morning. I said, Charlie, fix me a cup of coffee. He looked at me like I lost my mind. You hate coffee. I said, I want coffee. And then I started drinking every day since.
Wow.
Just little weird things that you know. The poetry 2009 just came. It's like, okay, that part woke up. Everything is an awakening for me. It's weird to say that I'm 65, almost 66, and I'm seeing brand new life. I became more of a risk taker physically. I mean, couldn't even swim worth a hoot. And since my accident, I've swam the Barrier Reef in Belize and snorkeled in Cozumel. So, and I wanted to skydive, but my cardiologist said, that's not going to happen. You're not going to do that. But face it, when you put your words out there, your art out there, you're a risk taker, because you never know how it's going to be received.
Yes, absolutely. And have you seen that reflected within your own poetry, from your earlier works to your current works?
Yes, because my first poetry, I'm a writer that looks at the world and interprets it in poetry, and usually short poems. I'm not a real long poem person. I'm pretty concise.
Yeah.
I like to put my ideas in and let people see it without having a lot of description or whatever that would pull them away from what I'm trying to say. And I find that the journey of discovering me, I go back, I left everything on my blog from the very first poem I ever put on there to now. And I see my own journey. I see the maturity. I see the influence of other poets that I have come to know. And so, I see my own evolution through it.
Yeah. Insomnia's Ink are the poems that came to you during the night.
Yes. I'm a night owl. I don't sleep very much at all. I'm mostly inspired in the night hours where it's quiet, because with as I said, I have ADD. I get so distracted by everything during the daytime. At night is like, it's kind of like a little cloak I can wrap around me and focus. And so Insomnia Inc. is just it's a chapbook meaning it's like a collection of 40 poems. And they are things that specifically were written in the night. Mm-hmm. And so I gave a variety of what is in there. From midnight is one section, and birdsong is I approach morning, and the difference in the tone of those pieces.
And it's often said that an artist's best work is created in those late night sessions because your body is more relaxed, your mind is more open, and the creativity just seems to flow with you more. Yeah. Do you go through any type of editing processes with your poetry, or is it whatever hits the page is it?
I'm a very visual writer. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at a photo, I'm looking out the window, or in my head, there's an image that I'm seeing when I'm writing it. I'm very visual. I write from visuals. If I get stumped and can't find what to write about, I just go through Google and look through picture after picture. And then all of a sudden, that picture's speaking. And then I will find the words that picture is speaking.
That's a very interesting concept. Okay.
It's called ekphrastic poetry when you write from an image. And I do that. Whether I'm posted an image on my page, that's my process. I do very little editing because I find I've tried it. I go like, well, that doesn't sound right. Let me rework it. I lose my original intent in for my personal journey when I try to overwork it. Usually I just write it and I leave it.
Yeah.
I only check for spelling errors or things like that, but otherwise I just leave it as I've written it because poetry to me is powerful. It's very powerful in my spirit, and it comes and it tells me. I don't know if you've noticed that in writing, but when something is finished, it lets you know.
Yes.
There's
definitely.
this sense I'm done. And so when I feel that, I just stop. There's a few that I've got to a certain point and I can't find that feeling yet. And then I'll have to come back to it. But as far as what was written before, it stays.
Yeah. Yeah. And isn't it interesting? A lot of writers say that a lot of times the story wants to write itself, or the story becomes its own thing and you're just the vessel which it's coming through. And I know that's very common with poetry as well, because there's a really fine line between, what the emotion is or what the concept you're trying to create, and yet the mechanics of writing as well, because at some point you do want it to be published.
Yes. And I find that we're living in a day where we're just reading bits and pieces a lot of times because we text, we tweet, we don't read a whole lot of in-depth sometimes. And what I like about poetry, I can give you that few words and I've really given a thought on it. And you can take that thought and read it in that length of time and take it in a little faster and then maybe chew on it later. But that's what I like about short poems.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I was just reading an article today talking about how the younger generation, these kids nowadays, they don't even use periods anymore. Like when they're sending text messages or instant chats, showing my age, I don't even know what it's called. But they're no longer using periods. They just basically type and then send. And that page break becomes the indication that it's a new thought. In one sense, it's cool because you're actually seeing a living language evolve. But then on the other sense, it's like, we're classically trained to use periods. So, it's just always that struggle of finding the common ground between the two.
Oddly enough, when I first started my poetry, I didn't use any punctuation.
Well, poetry also gives you that creative license to do that.
Oh, yes. I don't know if I could ever write a novel because, first of all, I don't think my mind could stay in with that big a story for that long. But I just like the freedom of poetry because it's so creative and it evolves. And there's not really much that you can do wrong when you're doing a poem. Do you write?
Yeah, I do. I have a pretty popular fantasy series right now. The first book is called The Hero of Legend. Wow.
I'm full of imagination, but to stick with something, I can write poetry that's kind of connected, but as far as doing a whole long story, My mind is always all over the place. And I admire anybody that can put together a story that's, a book or, I don't.
Well, I mean, the first story for me took about, I think, 10 years to write because it started off as just a story that I wrote in high school and then I rediscovered it. And then the other thing, kind of falling into poetry, is it was a rhyming epic adventure. So it was 100 pages
Wow.
completely written in rhyme. And
Whoa.
I self-published it thinking nothing of it, just a fun project to do. And it developed a following. And that's how it evolved into a full novel. Just writing a little bit at a time. That took a couple of years to write and rewrite.
Does the whole novel rhyme?
No, the novel itself, Hero of Legend, does not rhyme, but it comes from the original rhyming epic adventure.
I can't do rhyme very often unless it kind of has a childish sort of theme, because I'm not good with it. And when I do it, it sounds effective. Oh, she just tried real hard to rhyme, didn't she? And I love it when it's rhyme that just flows and you don't even notice it. It's like a song.
Yeah. Well, for me, I kind of think in rhyme anyway. I think about rhyme all the time. That's fine. But in high school, we were learning about the old epic adventures like Canterbury Tales and Beowulf. And I thought that was just amazing. And of course, I had to write one myself. And so because the story itself that I was trying to create was really complicated because it was about the only magical kingdom in existence and they're fighting because people want the magic for themselves or they're terrified of it. And then somewhere in there's a darkening sun and really complicated stuff. So I made the rhymes very Dr. Seuss simple. So that it would flow and be able to read. And I kept the story to 100 pages because nobody wanted to read 300 pages of rhyme. As far as your poems, both in this book and your previous book, do you find that you're more of an internal poet? Meaning, like, do you describe more so the emotions and the things that you're feeling? Or are you more external where you're describing the things around you or the situations around you?
I'm actually both. And a lot of times when I'm seeing something in a situation in the world around me, I write it in first person, whether it's my experience or not, because I find when I write it first person, the person that reads that, if it's got a connection to them, they immediately see themselves as the I in the poem. Mm. And that's one reason why a lot of times it's first person, because people say, oh gosh, you've really been through a lot. Yes, I have, but not everything. But the first person to me connects and keeps me connected as a writer to what I'm seeing and hearing.
Yeah, and that's a great way of personalizing your experiences or making them universal that people can relate to. That's so important nowadays because we have such polarizing opinions in the country nowadays, and just being able to find ways of relating to each other. I think that's a really great thing you're doing. And you're also pretty active within the writing community. Are you currently working on any new projects or any upcoming events?
I have an upcoming event, which will be in Denison, Texas. It's Dia de los Muertos, which means Day of the Dead. It's going to be a festival where they're going to have art and authors and parades, and it's going to be on November 5th.
Okay. Oh, and sorry, one sec. My puppy decided that she wants to play right now, so she's like nudging me. I guess my other question for you is, what advice would you give to new poets who may be afraid to share their works or their emotions with the world?
How I started, first of all, is to write your poetry down, and then I found a poetry group, which is called Imaginary Garden with Real Toads. We just abbreviated it to Real Toads. It has a place that has some incredible poets, and we do prompts. You write for the prompt, you share on the Real Toads page. People read it, people talk about it, encourage you, and that's what I would do, because poets, I feel like they understand each other, and poets are really good about encouraging one another. And then once you begin with just poets, then you can reach out and find out there's other people that don't write poetry that actually love it. And you know, it's just kind of like a journey that way.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
And where can readers find you and your stories online?
Okay, you can go to susieclevenger.com and it will have links all across the top of the page as to all the things that I do. My main blog is called Confessions of a Laundry Goddess. I do all sorts of things.
And with that, we'll wrap up another episode. Thanks again to Susie, and as always, if you have questions or comments about this episode or any episode, or if you know an author who you think would be a good fit for the show, let me know. Send a message to info@ch1podcast.com or connect with me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. And to all the authors who have already reached out to me, I have gotten your messages and I will be personally responding back to each and every one of you. That's it for me. You all take it easy. Until next time.